This is Alan Karpick with Brian Neubert and Tom Dienhart. Sunday conversation, and we're back to our Sunday conversations because there was no Saturday football as the Boilermakers in Wisconsin obviously did not get a chance to play. And yet kind of an eventful Saturday in some ways just because we're looking at Purdue's next opponent in Northwestern, the Wildcats. Not overly impressive statistically, at least in their win over Nebraska, but Northwestern undefeated 3-0 in conference play for the first time since 2000. And yet also that was the year that Purdue beat Northwestern and took them out of that unbeaten streak en route to the Rose Bowl. So, Tom, you had a chance to watch some of this stuff, these games today. What were your impressions of the Wildcats and the win over Nebraska?
Yeah, methodical. Pat Fitzgerald's teams never are going to be accused of being real flashy and dynamic offensively. But you know what, guys? They always get the job done typically. Disciplined team, tough team, just like, again, the head coach, the former Northwestern great linebacker. And like you said, Alan, offensively, they did just enough today. The transfer quarterback, Peyton Ramsey, can throw it. He's also good with his feet as well. They had to use their backup running back today because Isaiah Bowser was out. Riley Lease, the wide receiver, had a nice game as well. And guys up front, the offensive line for Northwestern had been sort of maligned, I don't know, for 4 or 5 years, and they're slowly gaining momentum. Brian knows about the recruiting Northwestern's done on its O-line of late. And that front's getting better, guys. They actually started a true freshman, left tackle. The kid's that good. So, again, Northwestern's always a tough out, guys, and it's going to be a lot of fun next week, I think, to watch Purdue's offense against the Northwestern defense because, guys, that Northwestern defense, I think, is the real reason why they're 3-0 right now.
Yeah, and Brian, you look at the landscape of the Big Ten. Indiana, extremely impressive today, really knocking Michigan for a loop. What is it, 24 years now? That streak is now changed, and obviously Penn State going down in big numbers today. You've said it all along, and you've been right that it's a COVID year, and it's the randomization to some extent of all this that you just never know exactly what you're going to see from week to week.
Yeah, I mean, you expected Michigan to be a lot better than they've played so far. You expected Penn State to be a lot better than they've played up until halftime of today's game right now when they're getting worked by Maryland.
Yeah.
But to the people who've surprised, you didn't necessarily expect a whole lot from Michigan State because you didn't know with the new coach and all that stuff.
Yeah.
With the people, though, who are playing well, Indiana had a good year last year. They've been building to this sort of thing. They've always thought very highly of their quarterback, and obviously the quarterback is playing very well. They might be onto something here, and this might not be the semi-annual Indiana fast start, and then it turns out to be a fluke kind of thing. They look pretty formidable. Minnesota looks like it's fallen off a little bit. Wisconsin, obviously, we have no idea because they're not playing. It's just a really interesting Big Ten this year because, literally anything can happen. What that has to do with COVID, I have no idea, but things do, with the exception of Ohio State, seem to be pretty well turned upside down. You see, Minnesota not necessarily playing great. You see Penn State not playing great. You see Michigan not playing great, but you do see Purdue unbeaten. You do see Northwestern unbeaten after an awful year last year. You see Indiana, rolling. Everything's kind of been turned on its head. And I mean, that can't be considered altogether surprising because we didn't know what to expect about this season, but it sure makes it interesting.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, and Tom, we've always been impressed with the job Tom Allen's done at Indiana, and he, though I didn't watch the whole game, but I did see his tackle of he bowled over his guy after a chest up. But they're playing it with enthusiasm, but they also have a really good quarterback and a great group. I mean, Purdue has a great group of receivers. Ohio State has a great group of receivers, but so does Indiana.
Yeah, Michael Penix Jr., guys. His problem was he could never stay healthy, right?
Yeah.
And he kept getting hurt, and it looks like so far so good, obviously, in 2020. He's healthy. I think everybody understands now why Indiana was so excited about this quarterback. an athletic left-hander. Nice thrower, guys. If anybody watched that game today, that guy, Penix was putting the ball on the spot, on the dime. I mean, making the right decision time and again. And Al, you talked about the wide receivers. Seems like Indiana always has a good set of wideouts, doesn't it? Trey Freifogel was outstanding today. Wap Fillier, of course, is still there. Peyton Hendershot, fellas, one of the best tight ends in the Big Ten, too. And how about Stevie Scott? I mean, again, IU's got a lot of weapons on offense, but their defense, that's Tom Allen's bailiwick. The defense is very good as well. So a lot of excitement in Bloomington, obviously. I'm going to get ahead of myself and dream of that bucket matchup down in Bloomington.
Yeah.
I was thinking in my head today, Purdue could be favored in every remaining game except for that one, guys. I'm not sure what the line will be this week with Northwestern and Ross-Ade Stadium. Purdue may be a slight favorite. Maybe it's a pick 'em. My point is, this does still set up very well for Purdue, guys. I mean, you don't want to get people overly excited, but again, you look at the Big Ten West, the hurdles Purdue has left there. There's no game that really scares you, right? You get Northwestern home. Minnesota looks like it's a shell of itself. Nebraska, guys, I mean, until they get a quarterback who can throw the football, forget about it. Rutgers has to come to Ross-Ade. And again, guys, like I just said moments ago, if you're a Purdue fan, you certainly got to like your chances to be in the thick of this Big Ten West race right down to the end.
Brian, Peyton Ramsey's done a great job, and we Purdue fans and observers saw how good he was this past November in Ross-Ade Stadium in that overtime win for Indiana. He brings, obviously to Northwestern, he's the kind of guy that just seems to get it done. And again, they were not great today, but their numbers didn't reflect that. They got outgained by Nebraska, et cetera. But it's a guy that's got a lot of moxie to him, it seems, as well.
Yeah, he threw a lot of picks, though, today, didn't he?
He threw 2 picks.
I know one of them
had
was
a pick
tipped.
6, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you play the way Northwestern plays, you can't turn the ball over.
Right.
So, I don't know. I didn't see that game. I watched Indiana and Michigan.
One was tipped.
Really, yeah, I saw that one on the highlights, but I didn't watch the game start to finish, so I don't really know what to say about his play. But, they're always that team that's just kind of a pain in the neck to play because they're usually so solid. They can't –
yeah.
They're kind of a little bit like Iowa in how they play, in that they don't, screw up very often. They're always tough on defense. They're usually pretty good in the running game, and you got to beat them at their own game. And, I don't know what Nebraska looked like today, but, a point to make here too is that it's time to put some Big Ten coaches on blast here. I mean, Scott Frost is simply not getting it done here. And Jim Harbaugh has yet to win a big game at Michigan, as far as I'm concerned. And, I don't know what's going to happen with this year in terms of what schools do about their coaches. I think it's probably still a little early on Frost, but, you have to be sitting here thinking that Michigan is, really starting to grumble here because you've got some of the highest paid, highest profile coaches in the Big Ten here who are simply can't get out of their own way. That has nothing to do with your question, but I needed to say something.
No, I think it's a good point, and it will be an interesting storyline to watch throughout the rest of this season. Is anybody going to be on the hot seat? Because can athletic departments afford to
Very true.
buy guys out? I mean, I don't know what the buyout is at Michigan. They've been talking about an amicable divorce for the last couple of weeks here and yet 2 weeks ago we were talking about how Michigan, after they whipped Minnesota, that maybe this would be the year. So again, that's the kind of year we're looking at. And
part of the issue with Harbaugh too is you can't act the way he acts and be bad.
Yeah, I agree.
It's you can't do that because it's just, if you're not winning big, you're not worth having around if you're like that. And it wasn't all that long ago, they were talking about like lifetime contracts. And I know a lot of people quietly were like, yeah, do that. People who have to recruit and play against Michigan were pretty excited about the idea of Harbaugh having a lifetime contract. And they're just not anywhere what they used to be. They recruit like they always have, but they don't win. They don't win any games that matter.
Yeah. And that surprised me because of what Harbaugh did coming before, what he did at other places before he came there. I just did not foresee that happening. But I think one thing he said is correct, is that, that attitude works until it doesn't. And when and all of a sudden, when you start losing, you wear thin, Tom. And I think that's kind of a little bit what you're seeing there. The expectations are so high, but this is a guy that, did it great with the 49ers, did a great job at Stanford. Can't do it at Michigan, his alma mater. Or not do it. He's done it, but he can't do it to the level that they expect.
Yeah, I always like to say, to whom much is given, much is expected, right,
Yeah.
guys? And Harbaugh's salary is astronomical. Michigan has not one but two indoor football facilities. On and on it goes with the excess, the extravagance, the unlimited budget. And still, like Brian said, he's great at beating who he's supposed to beat. Has not beaten, the big-time opponents. Now this year, guys, he's losing to teams he typically doesn't lose to, so it complicates the matter more. He only has 2 years left on his current deal, which has a lot of people perplexed. During this pandemic, I guess he sort of got crossways with the university president as well, with his vocalness about wanting to play. And, of course, the Michigan president was very much against playing, so there seems to be a feeling that maybe the administration's had its fill of Jim Harbaugh and his antics and his lack of performance at a high level. So we'll see where it goes. Like you said, fellas, with money being so tight, you'd think this university would be very hard-pressed to come up with the money needed to buy out a head coach and his staff. But to Brian's point, boy, if you were to put coaches on the hot seat in the Big Ten, you'd have Harbaugh right there with Frost. And how about Lovie Smith too, guys? My goodness, that seemed like a dubious hire in 2016, and it remains so today. And, yeah, again, I think most of these guys are going to get a pass because of the climate right now. And one last point, too, about, we talked about Iowa a little bit. Some people were trying to say, well, Purdue's 2-0 record wasn't that impressive. Well, I tell you what, that win over Iowa looks pretty good now, doesn't it? I know Michigan State's not good, but still, I think the way Purdue handled itself in its first game without its head coach, too, speaks volumes. And I sure would have loved to have seen Purdue in Madison today. That would have been a lot of fun. And again, I don't want to forget about the Badgers, guys. We've seen them one time this year, and they looked awfully impressive. And there was reports today from one of their beat writers, Jeff Petrikis. They got back on the field on Friday for some conditioning work. The COVID cases are going down, but I guess the game against Michigan is coming up is still TBD.
Yeah, and
Michigan doesn't want to play that game. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and that again, that is the COVID world we're living in, and it could pave the way for Purdue and some others to make a serious run. And yeah, Iowa's win. How about Michigan State? Losing to Rutgers and beating Michigan, and then getting just absolutely hammered today is a hard thing to figure out. All right, Brian, I know you spent your Friday night. It's been extremely warm in Indiana. But at least you had a warm enough night, I guess. Probably wasn't steaming hot in Maryville last night, but JoJo Johnson, you had a chance to see him. Lafayette, Maryville beat Lafayette Jeff and ended the Broncos season. But tell me a little bit about what you saw last night and anything of any consequence.
Well, I saw him get hurt on the first play of the second half and then not play the rest of the half. So
Isn't that amazing how that works?
Fortunately, he's okay, but I did in the first half. He did catch back-to-back touchdown passes, including a 76-yarder. Looks like a really good wide receiver. Looks like a really good offensive prospect. Hard for me to know. Purdue's recruiting him as a cornerback, so kind of hard for me to tell. He played corner, but there weren't any balls thrown his way. I had him for 2 tackles. Can't really tell you much about what he looks like as a corner, but he's tall. He's got a decent body. Not tall. He's got respectable size for a corner. He's got a decent body to him. He's obviously got some athleticism to him. He's got some change of direction, good enough speed, those sorts of things. He has an energy to him. Those sort of things translate well to cornerback. He's one of the few guys Purdue still has left on its board. I think if they're nearing completion on their class, they'll continue to dig into him. But from what I understand, since he's decommitted from Cincinnati, a lot of people are coming after him. Purdue's going to be right there. Michigan State's going to have a chance. Iowa's offered him, but I don't know if he's going to look at Iowa. I wouldn't look at Iowa these days if I were anyone. But with all that went on there in the offseason, but I think Purdue will have a pretty decent shot there. It's just so hard for these guys nowadays to have a meaningful recruiting experience. So when you open back up in September or October, whatever it was when he decommitted from Cincinnati, all he can really do is have Zoom visits and whatnot. I think that'd be more of an advantage for Purdue because he's so close, but you never know.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting thing to watch. All right, well, we're back to game week this week, and a lot of coverage and back to access with Purdue practicing, et cetera. And we'll look forward to getting ready for what will be a big night game in Ross-Ade Stadium Saturday night, it'll be November the 14th. Not sure we'll get it as warm as it would have been this Saturday night, but again, a great opportunity for Purdue to run its record to 3-0 and really take put themselves in a very good position in that division. So I want to thank our sponsor, and of course that's the Purdue Union Club Hotel. We appreciate all they do for us, and we also appreciate Tom and Brian and their insight into what was a busy weekend in college football. Just didn't happen to include Purdue. So we'll look forward to talking more next week. We'll have a post-game, it'll be a late night one, but a post-game wrap-up of the Purdue Northwestern game as well. So have a great week, everybody. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week on our Sunday simulcast, whatever we want to name this thing. But we want to thank our sponsor again, the Purdue Union Club Hotel, and have a great week, everybody.